My name's Toby Couture. I'm a musician, teach music, write music, play music, some different instruments, trying to focus on writing, but yeah, done different stuff. I was really into jazz piano in my early years. That was my main focus. Did a lot of that in New York before I came here, 10 years ago. I was doing all kinds of stuff like hip hop and reggae and African music and jazz still yet, pop, just whatever. Met my wife at a gig. Actually, she was a singer in a band that I was playing in. And yeah, we've done a bunch of stuff since then. I wrote some neoclassical stuff for a dance company that she co-founded, and done a bunch of jazz gigs together. Started my recording studio. Before that in New York, I was always writing music on paper and passing out charts to guys, and that was how I'd work. But then coming over here, I decided to go for a more of a recording studio type of setup to get my stuff out. I really love being here, and I love how much creative talent there is here. But I had to go a different way in order to collaborate with people here, and it's been a really great growth experience for me to kind of have to reinvent the way that I work, in terms of writing, especially in working with other people. Some people read, and I can work with people that way, but I found it was really limiting to have such a short list of people that I could work with, and it also was impoverishing to me to cut myself off from people who weren't in that world, or hadn't come from that musical culture. So I'm trying now to work in a way that I can incorporate people of all different backgrounds and with different talents and different voices to bring, whether they play by ear or they read or they maybe know some theory and want to help me write and do some stuff in the studio or whatever. And yeah, it's been good. And the teaching thing also is a way for me to try and take kids that are from here that want to go on and do music in the greater world, outside of Hawaii, on the mainland or across the world, and have the tools that they need to work and be on the level that's going to be expected of them outside of Hawaii, and also just to create a culture of reading musicians, people that play different instruments, or people that want to compose music and work in that way here. Similar to the mission statement of the dance company that my wife co-founded, Adaptations Dance Theater. They're all about creating a community of professional dancers here on Maui, so that people don't feel if they have a talent for dance, they have to leave their home. Because there's that conflict. From here, it's a beautiful place, it's your home, but you also have this baby, your gift for dance or music or whatever that you feel is calling you to go somewhere else, because the opportunities are there. And if you really want to reach the highest level of your craft, you need to go to LA or New York or Europe or wherever, I think that it's an important thing that we do to share our gifts with the younger generation and create a community that sustains and supports each other in that goal. And that's, of course, not to take anything away from hula or Hawaiian music, which already, has a rich and thriving culture, and which I'm happy to say is growing too. And I've played that music, and I've worked with Hawaiian musicians and accompanied, Tahitian dance and things like that. And yeah, it's beautiful. And I think that the way forward is by incorporating those different things. Just I feel the message of Hawaiian music is, Hawaiian music that we know today wasn't the same 100 years ago, hapahaole songs, and incorporating musical elements from Christian music, himeni songs, writing Hawaiian lyrics to songs that were already existing, a melody that was already existing. And so I think that's a beautiful thing about Hawaiian culture, aloha spirit, and also the power of art and music and dance is to incorporate these things and move forward, while acknowledging our history and our traditions, not being so beholden to them that we're unwilling and inflexible to move forward in the world that's constantly changing, and it's always changed around us. I think it's something like, a reed in the wind must bend or it will break, and we see that model around us in nature all the time, of being adaptable and being creative, always looking for a source of inspiration, a new resource, and being willing to change ourselves and let go of the things that aren't working anymore and embrace new things that will work. And in that way, keep it alive, keep a tradition alive. So I've always been more a believer in an approach and in a message more than in raw material or details, you know? Our concept of what it is, instead of really being open to the meaning and the experience of what that art is, and allowing that spirit within it to dwell and continue and survive through whatever changes are coming, you know, and have been coming already for a while. So anyway, that's the role I try and play, is I try and be open. I try and use whatever gifts I have to bring to the table to allow a new formation of different musical elements or artistic elements in other media to be a sign or a reflection of our times, and hopefully a teacher, you know, and also a healer. It's all an act. I got him fooled. Well, like my heroes of music, I mean, there's a long list. But I would say, I mean, like Keith Jarrett, jazz pianist, who I think is just beyond the mountain. And Miles Davis, of course, D'Angelo, I look up to a lot as like a great voice of neo soul music, which I think is awesome and it's been inspiring to me. Yeah, like hip hop. I mean, there's so many artists like that influenced me a ton. Busta Rhymes, as a young kid, I just thought his early stuff with J Dilla was just like amazing. Yeah, and Nas and Tupac, of course, like so much passion, and also somebody who was willing to like really reinvent themselves, or like, you know, he had such a short career and such a short life, but he was willing to really show so much bravery, like towards the end, you know, like compared like what stuff he was doing at the beginning of his life to the end of his life. I found it really inspiring that he was willing to be brave and vulnerable enough to like reach out and to women, you know, and to address bigger cultural issues. And I find that inspiring. His courage and his passion, I find that inspiring. There's tons of classical composers that like reinvented the game that I am in awe of, like Stravinsky, you know, John Cage, Steve Reich, like.
You remember your earliest moment, like the first time you heard music, or the first time that it was like, oh, this is something that's different than anything else I've experienced?
Yeah. Yeah, I have to say, like the first time I heard hip hop, you know, I grew up in a really like isolated area of New York, and I had some cousins though that like lived in Albany and kind of like a rougher neighborhoods and stuff. And it was always fun going and checking them out, and they just lived in a different world, you know? And that's how I got exposed to a lot of stuff. Like, I think he hooked me up with my first Busta Rhymes CD, and I was like, oh my God, dude, what is this? This is awesome. Both my parents are musicians. My dad was like a folk musician and played some jazz and stuff. And my mom was classical. She was really into Baroque music, you know? So two really different traditions, you know? And my path through music kind of roughly gravitating around the jazz tradition. I almost feel like it's sort of like a combination of those two things, you know? Yeah. And talking earlier about combining different things, like different musical elements or traditions and stuff, like that is what jazz is anyway, you know? Combining those two musical traditions into something that was like so unique and expressive and adventurous and spontaneous, but also really, really well thought out. Like really beautiful and intricate and yeah, like a jewel, you know, that was like unearthed in that time in America. And I always try and think about, try to imagine what the circumstances were that would allow that music to like come to the surface, you know? And I'm always trying to be aware of like the potential for that thing now to come with what we are going through now. Like 2020 has been a ride, you know? But even before that, you know, it's not like things were great here, you know, in America in general. Like, yeah, on Maui we got some stuff that we can be thankful for, really grateful for, you know, but that's not to overlook what other people are going through, and in this country and in this world too as a whole, like that we have some growing pains that we're going through, you know. And I feel like art can be a really important thing to see us through that, and sometimes you need to like what you're saying, like listen to some music that's like, wow, I've never heard anything like this before. You know, if the message behind that sound is righteous, if I can use that word, then I think we have something. The first time I heard like Rage Against the Machine was a real eye-opening experience for me too, you know, both like in terms of an awesome sound and a combination of like rap and rock, let's say, that was really striking to people at the time, and then having that message, you know, whether you agree with it or not, it was a message that wasn't really being represented in the mainstream of music or news, media, or whatever, you know. And like I said, whether you agree with it or not, it started an important conversation, you know. I'll be honest, when I first started teaching, I mean, I was just broke. I just got out of college in New York, you know. I was like struggling, and teaching was like, that's what you do. You got a degree in music, so you're like, all right, you need to pay the bills. I'm not getting as many gigs as I had really envisioned. I figured as soon as I graduated, the world of music would be waiting for me with open arms, ready to hoist me up. You know, it didn't really work out like that. And so I started teaching, and I've been teaching now, like I've been teaching since I was in high school. So I've been teaching for like a while now. And I've really come to appreciate it, not only because I think it's an important thing to continue these traditions, to carry on tradition, and to try and give kids not only the tools of a craft of music, but also the understanding that they are powerful, and try to at least give them some perspective on what is the purpose of music, and what can be the purpose of music. For good or for bad, any power has positive potential and negative potential. These artists in the past have helped us weave and continue to weave this tapestry that we now experience, you know. But to understand that at any point, any thread now can change drastically the tapestry of what's to come, you know, and any one of us or any group of us could be that thread or those threads, you know. So that's an important thing about teaching, I think, that often it's too often overlooked. You know, it's all about, okay, do your scales, and like all of a sudden that's all very important, you know. But like, okay, now you're a great musician, now what? You never get prepared for that. I wasn't prepared for that, you know. Like, what is it now that you're gonna do? What is the influence that you want to have in the world around you? You know, what is your message? Because that's the whole point, you know. And music, it is all accompaniment to a message, you know. So what is the message? Is it a message of love or a message of something else, right? And like, how do we express that? How do we express that in a way that satisfies us, but also reaches the people who need that message, you know? That's a tricky thing. And so I think it's really important that artists are being like given the opportunity to pursue their craft and not be evaluated purely on like the quote unquote measurable economic value that they contribute to society, that it exists kind of above and apart from that way of thinking and that way of measuring resources or human life, you know? So I feel like everybody who gets really good at something, I feel like has some obligation, even if it's just to one student, to pass it on, you know? And I think it takes something too. It takes something different than what it takes to create art to teach, you know? They're parallel and they influence each other, but they're both, they're both gifts, let's just say that. One is a gift of art to the listeners, and one is a gift of the craft to the artist. I owe a lot to what I have today in my toolbox as an artist to the years I spent teaching.